In this video, I'll look at setting up the prototypes for outfalls. An outfall represents the downstream end of the system, which is going to be the point after which you do not want to model and the flow is going to leave that system. Although a headwall structure can be used to terminate a network, typically this is going to be done with an outfall feature definition, which already has a predefined boundary condition. So I'll go ahead and create a new outfall prototype. And if we take a look at the properties, there's really not a lot to set here. The main thing we are going to be focusing on is the boundary condition type. Another setting you might want to set is if it has a tidal gate or not. So if we set this to true, backflow is going to be restricted from entering the system from the outfall. Let's take a look at the different options we have for boundary type. Starting at the top of the list, we have a boundary element. This is going to enable you to specify an element, which is typically going to be a pond, to receive flow that discharges out of the outfall. So if you need to direct outfall flow to another part of the model, instead of assuming that it exits the system, you're going to be using a boundary element. If you set it to crown, it's going to automatically set the outfall tailwater elevation to the top of the connecting link element. And this is going to be useful if you're trying to model an outlet that is submerged. Here we have an elevation flow curve. So this is going to allow you to input data to create a curve that's going to be flow as it relates to the outlet elevation. The free outfall, this is used in cases where the water flows freely out of the system with no tailwater effects. So for instance, you might have a pipe spilling into a channel where the channel water surface does not rise to the outfall invert. And this is going to be the setting that I set as the default for all of my in sections here that are going to be used as outfalls. And then after placement, per project, they can go in and select the boundary condition that they would want that's going to meet their needs. If we choose normal, this is going to automatically set the outfall tailwater elevation to normal depth in the last channel or conduit. So this means that it will solve for the normal depth of the connecting conduit or channel and use that as the tailwater depth at the outfall. And so in a lot of cases, this is going to be very similar to what we see with a free outfall. If we choose a tidal, this is going to be very similar to the time elevation, but the pattern is going to repeat. So it can be used to model tidal cycles. And if we choose this option, we're also going to need to put in the time elevation curve for that. If that pattern is not going to repeat, then you're just going to have a time elevation curve, which again will allow you to input the elevation as it relates to time. And lastly, we have a user-defined tailwater, which is where you can directly enter the tailwater elevation. So I'll go ahead and set this one to free outfall, and then I'm also going to rename my prototype. And now I'm going to assign that prototype to all of my outfall structures. Now, right now I only have in sections. There are other options for an outfall structure. It could also be, instead of just a headwall structure, it could be an inlet that could be used as an outfall. It could be some sort of junction box. But I'm going to assign these all as a free outfall here. Now, looking at the other properties in the prototype, things that you might want to consider is the design option. So if it is something other than a headwall type of structure, you might have a desired sump depth, or maybe you want to set a minimum or maximum conduit cover at the node. Now, as far as the structure elevation, we're never going to be designing the elevation of an outlet structure. The software assumes that that is going to be a set elevation already. Next, moving into the existing structures, we'll want to create a prototype that can be assigned to those. I'm just going to duplicate the one I created for the proposed and then rename it. And for this existing, I'm going to use my default as a user-defined tailwater. And then I'll change the boundary condition type to match. And I'll do a bulk selection of my features and then quickly go in and assign that prototype.